Welcome to the How to Thrive, Not Just Survive series. This is our second of 3 running sessions throughout May and early June. We had our first session last week around building trust and building connections and confidence. We would like to invite you to a wrap-up session that we are having at the beginning of June on June 2nd in the evening, where we also have a bit of networking. So welcome, guys, and hope you enjoy the sessions today, all in line with CoreNet's theory and theme for this year, which is driving positive change. Just to give you a little note about myself, my name is Sarah Brown, Project Director at TP Bennett. I've been involved with the series from the inception, which probably started around this time last year. It's been a fantastic journey, and all of our presenters have been along with us at varying capacities, and it's been exciting. So thank you for coming. I would like to give a quick shout out to Tamara McKinsey from Stanway Interiors, who has also been very integral to this. And so thank you so much for your involvement. We do have a few upcoming events with CoreNet, so please be on the lookout on the events link on the website. As we've already noted, on June 2nd, we have our wrap-up session. So we did run a session in January, we ran one at the beginning of May, and we'll have this one. If you were not able to attend any of them, or you were able to only attend one of them, we would love to see you in June for a quick recap, sharing a bit of content and also a bit of networking. Other things coming up this summer are around the architectural walking tour, some occupier insights, charity event, mentoring. We're trying to cover lots of wonderful things for you guys. So come one, come all. We would like to pause a moment to say thank you to our wonderful sponsors. None of us would be here today without them. So just take a minute to breathe, look at who they are, and thank you so much for going on this journey with us. Now, guys, I won't take much of your time because the real impact is coming. We have some wonderful speakers today. We have Amelia and Gabi, both are life coaches and are here to really allow you to empower yourself and bring out everything that has to do with your confidence and your inner leader. We also have Rachel and Rosie, who are going to start to help us understand how we really build community in this new world that we're living in. So guys, without further ado, I'll hand the baton to Amelia and Gabi.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you. It's lovely to see so many names. We can't see faces just yet, but thank you so much for joining us. We've put a worksheet into the chat. Hopefully you're all downloading it as we speak. Please let us know if you can't. I think Steph's going to help us out on circumnavigating any problems there. Hello, I'm Amelia. I'm working here today with Gabi, my partner in crime. And Gabi and I are both certified leadership coaches. And I am recognizing some names. Some people might know me from my time in corporate real estate. I was a workplace strategist for a while. And I also blend part of my services, if you will, with my career in acting, and I'm also a presentation coach.
Hi everybody, it's great to be here with you. So as Amelia said, I am a certified coach and I'm also training as a psychotherapist. So I'm working within the NHS at the moment. And Amelia and I run our own coaching practices, but together we are Pivot Points Coaching and Pivot Points Podcast. So we work with teams and individuals focusing on developing leadership skills around resilience and change, and also teach leaders the art of coaching and how to integrate it into their daily lives. I apologise for my neighbour's building work. I am going to keep muting myself. This is working.
It's been fun. We've had lots of drilling. It sounds all right today, Gabs. So jumping into today, guys, we have something quite different for you, we hope, today. They say, I don't know who they are, but they do. They say that we are our own worst enemy. And I really want you to pause and consider that for a second, because if you think about it, we really, really are. And we've all heard of imposter syndrome, I'm sure. Well, unfortunately, that's only one aspect of negative self-talk. And we are really exploring today, what do your limiting beliefs about yourself stop you from doing? Does it stop you from speaking up? Do they stop you making clear decisions? Do they stop you asking for what you need? Do they stop you creating big, juicy goals for yourself?
So in this workshop, what we are going to do is bring awareness to what we tell ourselves every day. We are going to make you more conscious of your inner narratives, both the positive and the negative side, and the impact these narratives have on us. So we will look then at how to conquer this type of thinking and allow you to bring your best self to work and to your life in general and your relationships. For the purpose of this workshop, we're going to call the narratives your inner leader and your inner critic. And we're going to start with the one that is sadly most familiar to people, and that is your inner critic.
So this inner critic, this is the little gremlin that you hear when you're just about to do something big or step towards a really big goal or take a leap of faith. It's the little voice in your head that goes, can you really have that difficult conversation? Hey, you've got that big report to submit. Is it really good enough? Is it perfect? It might come up when you start to think about speaking in front of a crowd. No, I'm a little jittery. Got my cold hands. It's the one that, oh, will they like it? It's the one that, may also stop you saying no to something because you know that it's the straw that's going to break the camel's back, but you can't say no. And it might be the bugger that gets you in the mirror just before you go out the door. Tells you you look terrible today.
We use the positive intelligence framework by Shirzad Carmine to split the inner critics up into 10 archetypes. You might resonate with several of these, or perhaps there's one that really stands out, but this is just to give you an idea of the different forms that they can take.
So this is a very high level whistle-stop tour for the purposes of today of these archetypes. And we've provided links to in the worksheet if you want a deeper dive after this session. So just, if you can open up the worksheets and let us know if you can't get hold of them. Oh, Gabs, are you there? Oh, she's on mute. Oh no, she's having a terrible
Sorry. So what we're going to do now is we're going to give you an outline of each, and then, sorry, I've got a bit distracted with the chat.
Oh, that's okay. Do you want me to pick it up?
No, I am good. Yeah, we're going to go through now. We're going to give a high level outline of each of them. And in your worksheets that hopefully you've got, and if you don't, just shout, you can follow along. And as we go through, we think it would be helpful if you just take notes of the narratives that resonate with you most and where they show up in your life. So if one stands out, you might just say, yes, that really comes up when I'm doing a presentation.
Yes, so we're going to explain each one of these 10 archetypes to you now. So the first one is actually one that is in all of us. The rest may be a smaller or bigger voice for you, but this one does come up for all of us in some way or other. And we call it the judge. And the judge kind of has a couple of different ways of coming at us. There's judgment of self, which, could be, I'm sure some of you will resonate with, oh, how could I be so stupid? I'm not good enough. I'm not qualified enough. This has got imposter syndrome written all over it. There's also the way the judge is about judging others. It can take quite a superior tone. So it could be that I'm better than, or it could be, why did they get that? Or surely I'm better than this guy. So we can get into that kind of comparison mode.
And the second one is the controller. So this one's quite anxiety based. There's a need to take charge and won't trust others. So it might say things like, eye roll, if you want something doing, just do it yourself.
You might have the stickler as well. That comes out in the kind of form of perfectionism, but perfectionism in the extreme. It can be very clear cut, right or wrong. There's no in between. And actually, it might say things like, if you can't do it perfectly, don't do it at all. So it might cut you off from doing anything if you can't do it very perfectly.
And then we have got the hyperachiever. So the hyperachiever is performance and achievement above all else. And the narrative with this one is, you know, I am worthy as long as I'm successful. I'm worthy as long as people think well of me and see me in a certain light.
The next one is very close to Gabi in my heart. It's one that we have had to work through and still work through every day. It's the pleaser. It's that voice that says, just be nice, be a good girl, be liked, just say yes so that everyone's happy and everyone likes me. That comes up a lot for us.
Yeah.
You might resonate.
And then we've got, which kind of leads on nicely, the avoider. So the avoider will just avoid conflicts at all costs. They'd rather give someone their way than create a scene, even if they don't agree.
Seeing a couple of nodding heads. Me too. The next one is hyper vigilant. So this has got a lot of anxiety within it, a lot of worry, very spinning of wheels, and it can accelerate so quickly. It can be, oh, if I make a mistake at work, I'll get fired, not told off. It would be like straight away fired. Then my family will hate me. Then my wife will leave me. Then I can't afford the mortgage payments. Then I'll be on the street. So it's literally from mistake to homeless in like 3 seconds. That's the extreme version. But I think we can all say we've been there.
And then we've got the hyper rational one. So this is kind of rationale and logic above all else. That the narrative with this is, you know, feelings are just distracting and irrelevant.
And then I definitely have this restless, she says, doing this for some reason, restlessness. It's that kind of not really a fan of the detail, very kind of what's next, what's new, what's exciting. If I fully commit to this, will I be missing out on something else? It's very FOMO.
And then we've got the victim. This is quite internally focused, you know, why me again? And there tends to be a bit of a martyr streak with this critic.
So just take a moment there. I'm sure that's all been quite triggering, actually. I know it is for me, even hearing it back myself when I run this thing. So just take a few minutes to just note down what really came up for you there. Like where did these guys appear for you? And we've got some questions in the worksheet there that really help to kind of coach you through that. So just kind of really dig in and understand, maybe take some notes here about which critics stood out, what felt really familiar about, and when do they come up for you? When are they really loud? When do they come up in stereo for you? Just take some notes there.
And you can find the narrative as well in that worksheet. So what do they say to you? Maybe Amelia and I didn't pick up on it. Maybe they have a specific narrative that you hear. What do they stop you doing? How do they make you feel?
I had a client just the other day, actually, and you know, we had done like a kind of assessment on this, and we found that hers, we called hers very specifically. What will they think? What will they think? What will they think? What, literally, it just runs everything. What will they think? And she does, so actually finds that she doesn't do anything for herself. It's just, how will it appear to them? Can I be, you know, so there's avoider and pleaser in here. You know, how can I please? How can I serve? But like gives and gives and gives until there's nothing left, in a way. So what's that version for you? And just let us know. Maybe give us a reaction with a kind of thumbs up or something when you're kind of through, so we're ready to move on. We want to give you as much time with these as you need.
We know no one likes to do thumbs up on Zoom, but
we realized that with the lawyers yesterday.
yeah,
The thumbs up with lawyers.
they were not fans of the thumbs up. We think it's cool.
Yeah. But I was born in the 80s, so that's why. We just the one last question there on the critic piece in the worksheet. We really like this one. It's quite punchy. You know, if I continue to live my life with the critic's voice making my decisions, what would I be tolerating? It's quite a big one there. So in lieu of the thumbs up, Gabs, what do you reckon? Shall we continue?
I reckon those black boxes look like they're ready.
They're ready.
Yeah. I'm sensing
it. So all of these critic combinations, however they show up for you, they will be unique in their combination for you. They really have an impact on our mindset and therefore our actions and how we show up within a group. They can influence how we have a sense of belonging, and it can really mess with our heads around the roles that we take within a team. So Rachel and Rosie are really going to pick up on this later about how we show up and how we can belong. And these critics might be the bit that's getting in the way.
Okay, so let's shake off the critics and we are going to flip the script and get you to move into your inner leader. So Amelia and I brainstormed some words that we think are helpful to bring your inner leader to life. So we feel it's that strong North Star or the guiding light, your wisest self, even an inner expert. And it's an inner resource that already knows the answer. And it's what we're going to use to bust your inner critic. So your inner leader will actually connect you with success stories from your past to boost your confidence. And in coaching, we use it with our clients to give another perspective. So we may ask, what would your inner leader do in this situation?
So we are now going to do a visualization with you. And it's about 5 or 6 minutes. You ladies and gentlemen who have got their cameras on, you are very welcome to turn them off, because we do feel like it's great to be able to close your eyes and really connect with what comes to you, like be in a place that you are not distracted, because we really want you to have a conversation with what you find within your mind's eye. So I'm going to be asking you some questions within this visualization, and I just want you to sit with the questions and have a conversation there. And you'll get to capture all your answers after. We've got all of the questions in the worksheet, so don't worry about that. My note to you as well is please don't judge what comes up for you, because it really does come up in so many different forms. People have inner leaders that are in human form, in spirit form, in a nature setting. It's all they see is the actual setting itself. It could be an animal form, a cloud, a spirit. It does not matter. It could just be a feeling. So please don't judge what comes up. Just kind of sit with it and just, open your mind and don't judge. You literally cannot get this wrong. So what I would like to ask of you is that you are in a comfortable position and to close down your eyes, and we're going to take a short journey to meet your inner leader. So please take a deep breath, and as you release that breath, just let yourself relax and notice where you might be tense, and breathe into that place and just let that tension go. Shake it out and just Breathe into it. Now take another deep breath. And as you let go of that breath, let your imagination go. And let it take you to a place where you feel safe. Now, this could be any type of place. This could be something completely made up, or it could be somewhere that you know really well. And it might be outside, or it might be inside. Just whatever comes to mind, and just take the first thing that comes to mind and just go there. And as you imagine this place, really take a look around. If you're outside, is it flat or is it hilly? It might be a forest or a meadow. If you're inside, are you by a cozy fire? Are you tucked up in bed? On a lovely lounge seat? Just have a really good look around. And maybe notice the time of day it is. It might be your favorite time of day. What is the light like at this time? You might notice the sounds, wind in the trees or birds. Maybe there's a sound of water nearby. You might be able to touch something here. The bark of a tree, the smoothness of a countertop. What's the smell of this place? Is it earthy, salty from a beach? You might have coffee in the pot. Whatever comes to mind, just let it really come alive for you so you can almost taste it. And as you walk around and get to know this safe place, you will hear the sound of someone approaching, and there is a sense of excitement. You're about to meet your inner leader. Your inner leader is that part inside of you that is clear and knowing. Your inner leader knows that your life is as it should be in this moment, and at the same time holds the paradox of wanting more for you. This part of you knows your strengths, your talents, your gifts, and your limitations, and has room for all of you. Your inner leader believes in you completely and no matter what. They hold you with gentleness, compassion, and infinite patience. Their core qualities are empathy, wisdom, innovation, navigation, and decisive action. And now they come into view. Your inner leader walks towards you, eager to meet you. So as they approach, take a full look at your inner leader. What do they look like? And what do you sense as you look at your inner leader? What's their energy like? How do they move? How are they dressed? Is their hair short or long, dark or light? Look into their eyes as you get closer. What do you see? Really sink into the energy of it. What does the energy feel like? Now greet each other in whatever way feels right to you. What does that feel like? So now I'd like you to find a spot in this safe place to be with each other for a conversation. Sit down and get comfortable, or you might go on a walk together, or look out at a view. Find a place to have a conversation with your inner leader and ask them these questions, and I'll give you a bit of time to have that conversation after each. What is your role in my life? What is important for me to understand about you? What do you want for me? How can you support me at work and in my life? What am I holding back on? Is there somewhere in my life that you can see I'm playing small? What do you have to say to my inner critics? What name or image will give me easy access to you? As the conversation draws to a close, notice that your inner leader has a gift for you. Receive their gift and notice what it is. Ask them, is there anything you should know about this gift? Now thank each other, knowing that you can be with your inner leader anytime you choose. They are here for you to support you in your journey of incredible leadership. So now, take a deep breath, breathing in this experience, remembering what you need to remember. And with another deep breath, return to this space and this time. And with another deep breath, just blink open your eyes, maybe have a little stretch, and just take your attention to your worksheets and just jot some things down for yourself there. We've given you some prompter questions. Just really flesh out what came to you. And whenever you're ready, just turn your cameras back on and we'll narrate through. And by all means, ask questions if you need to. If something didn't quite form in your mind, please do say.
That was really beautiful, Amelia.
Thanks, darling.
I
was semi-freaking out because my cleaners just arrived and didn't read the note on the door. So all my critics came out to play.
No, it was amazing. If something didn't land with anyone, if you didn't get something, please let us know. We can support you in getting there another way.
I really like the question on the worksheet around what would you do if this person was in control all the time? I think that's like the ultimate goal, isn't it? Yeah. To be that person. I mean, we've been doing this for years and I'm still not there. I think you'd have to be a Zen master, but I think that's the whole point, isn't it? Just to keep trying, keep connecting.
And you can break it down, you know, what would be the impact at work? What would be the impact in your relationships? What would be the impact in your life?
And the reason we ask for a name here, and the reason we give you the visual, if one came for you, is because we want you to be able to anchor it back to you, for yourself. We want you to be able to recall this easily, and labeling things really does allow us to connect more easily.
Mm.
Thank you, Farida. That's really sweet. Thank you. Lovely comments.
Amelia's got a great inner leader. Do you want to tell us?
I actually, mine morphed.
Oh.
When I first found her, she was a pirate queen. I don't know if that's at all obvious. But now she's more like a Greek goddess. She's a bit more ethereal and calm. But I really needed the pirate queen when I found her, to make a career change, funnily enough. So I needed that kind of energy. But now I need more serene. I think my boyfriend would agree.
So we use this inner leader to give us a new perspective on a situation. You know, how would my inner leader react to this? And also to combat the critics. It also can help. It's a really good resource to be able to see another way through and to give us confidence when we don't know the next step. It's a way of tapping into that inner wisdom that we have that sometimes feels really hard to access when the critics are just there.
And hopefully what we've done today is really tuned the volume up on what exactly it is we are listening to, because no one had a personality transplant today. You know, both of these are sides of us. We can really beat ourselves up, or we can be really kind to ourselves. And we have choice. We are always at choice about where we operate from. And we often really don't remember that this is a choice, because our reactions feel so instinctual and unchangeable in a way. And so that's what we do. That's the work that we do, is to bring this to your consciousness and to find other options. So we really want you to start to notice when your critic is present, and to get really curious about what it says to you. And the challenge we propose is, can you catch it? What, you know, before it's done its damage, and can you channel your inner leader to find a new perspective, to find a new choice, to find a new direction? And this is a muscle that needs to be built, because very often the critic is very, very well established, probably from childhood, that early on. And so this is a muscle that really needs to be worked on and built up and ingrained into your everyday.
Yeah, I think that's definitely right. We're also used to listening to our critics. It feels normal to let them control what's going on, and it feels very abnormal to put anything kind of powerful and positive into the mix. So we've got some questions in the worksheet for you guys to just turn back to now, which are, what would it be like to understand that the person you like least in the team is actually being fueled by their inner critic in your interactions?
You almost hate to admit that, isn't it? It's just like, what? No, they're just being an idiot.
Yeah.
What's running them? What's running the show for them? You can actually start to, if you look at that list in the worksheet, you can start to see, I know, oh, that's my sister. Oh yeah, a bit of that and my dad. You can start to see things. It's kind of good to intellectualize these things sometimes.
And how would you approach them differently if you came from that place? And I think that the last two questions there are really interesting. How can you take this tool back to your teams? And what difference would it make?
So by all means, take a couple of minutes to jot that down for yourselves. And we'll wrap up.
Mm. We're going to leave you with an analogy that we like to end on, because we feel it sums up the inner critic and inner leader quite well. If we think about our lives as a car, we want to be very aware of who is driving. So we want our inner leaders driving our lives, deciding where we go, what route we take, when we stop, how fast we go, who comes along. We want an inner critic in the back to tell us, you know, be careful, there's a speed camera, or there's a child playing in the road over there. But we don't want the inner critic in control in that seat, making the decisions. And so just really noticing who is driving things for you, and knowing that you have a choice there about who you give the wheel to.
So that was our whistle stop tour. If there are any questions, we do have a few moments to ask, or if something didn't come up for you and you would like to ask, please do. We have got time before we hand over.
One thing I'll say is, I think a lot of the time, everyone feels their critics are louder and stronger than anyone else's. We all feel this way, and there are ways to work with them. This is a tool to start using, but like Amelia said earlier, it's a muscle. And if you rarely come from the place of your inner leader, it's going to feel very alien and difficult. But if you can start implementing it, stand how you think your inner leader stands once a day. Put your shoulders back, engage your core, you know, plant your feet in the ground and start to build up.
And maybe if an image did come to mind for you, or a visual, maybe the gift itself might have been something very physical or something that's already with you, make that the structure to reconnect with them. Connect.
Yeah.
Every day, 3 times a day, 5 times a day.
My fiance's got a post-it note on his laptop to like remind him to like, you know, bring it.
And some people do like a screensaver, or just of the safe place, perhaps. So lots of different ways to reconnect. Yeah, and get in touch if you have any questions. Please do.
Thank you, everyone.
Probably hand over to the marvelous Rachel and Rosie. Take it away, guys. Let's see how the belonging, the art of belonging and the critic can coexist.
I don't know about anyone else, but I'm feeling very relaxed.
I know, I don't think I really want to know a thought-provoking piece of webinar. But no, thank you, Amelia and Gabi. I mean, I think Rachel and I have both done those before, and I think what we were reflecting on even before we just did that is how powerful it is to even do it if you've done it again. So I think if you've got the worksheet, you know, do it again in a few months' time when you're at a different moment. I think it's obviously you won't have the soothing dulcet tones of Amelia reading it out, but I think it's really powerful. But and I think for the context of what Rachel and I are going to be speaking through, I think it's really interesting in terms of being that base grounding. I think at this moment where we're all needing to make stronger decisions about how we want to live our lives, the choices we're going to make about where we work, where we live, all of those things. And I think this is a really strong basis. Rachel and I are going to be kind of moving the perspective not so much looking inwards, but looking a bit more outwards as to, once we make those decisions about how we live our lives, what does that mean in terms of how we build connections and those different scales of connection? And obviously, being in the context of corporate real estate, we're going to be thinking that through in terms of what do our places need to do to support those things and help us build connection. So I think Rach is going to share.
I'm just going to share a screen, and I'm going to add to that this belonging and connection are such a universal thing that so for the past couple of years, I've been doing a bit of work. I think I've spoken about it before with the Loneliness Lab, and we realized that loneliness, which is the sort of opposite of this connection and belonging, is sort of such a universal thing that it can't be tackled alone. And so when we go through this, my sort of proposal to you is to think about how to think more broadly and connect more broadly with people to start to build these themes as we return to whatever our sort of future lifestyle way of working is.
Yeah. Okay. So for those of you who don't know me, I think we'll just start with a little intro before we launch into everything, just to set the context of where we're coming from and I guess the perspective we're bringing to today. So I'm Rosie Haslam, I'm a director at Street Sense. We're an experience-focused strategy and design group with a very insight-driven approach to trying to understand people and what they really want and need from a place, and using that understanding to help reimagine, activate, transform spaces into amazing places that, in the context of today, thriving places that really are about driving community and driving value. And I also have a background in workplace strategy. So I was also at Space Lab, a sort of workplace strategy and design practice for about 7 years, running their research and strategy team. And there, so I think today is about those two threads, bringing those two threads together. So grounded in sort of knowledge and a lot of work on, what is the future of work, but also then bringing in this wider perspective on, okay, so therefore what are the widest places and spaces we need in this very changing context that we're going through.
Cool. And thanks Rosie, Rachel Edwards, similar to Rosie, and we actually used to work together, have a background in workplace strategy, both sort of in-house, so I understand what a lot of you are going through in this return to the office, and consulting, and now work in workplace futures at Lendlease. So it's an integrated property company, for those of you who don't know, with a real sweet spot in sort of the larger scale urban regeneration, so creating places where people live, work and play, and creating a connection and a sense of belonging in those places is so important for them to be thriving. So that's very much a part of my role. And then beyond that, sort of my passion, as I mentioned, I've been very involved in the Loneliness Lab, who are a social impact initiative co-founded by Lendlease a couple of years ago to really think about how we can reduce loneliness across the cities that we live through the way that we design places, spaces, the hardware and the software, so the kind of physical and the way we program places. So this is, for both of us, I think, been something we've been working towards for quite a while.
Yeah. So I think I kind of mentioned, the context, springboarding from what Amelia and Gabi said about this moment of change, and at this point, particularly with things opening up even more so this week, we are at that point where people are having to make these decisions about, okay, well, actually, how do I want to live my life? But that big part of that is obviously how and where am I going to work? So there's sort of the individual scale, people making decisions, and research that I carried out at Space Lab and certainly being corroborated by most surveys is this idea of probably going into the office not full time, 2 to 3 days a week, this sort of hybrid future, and at the same time businesses making decisions about what works for them in terms of how they want their people to work, and therefore what their spaces need to be and what they need to do. So I think the focus has been on, okay, well, how often am I going into work? What am I doing when I'm there? And I think the bigger question that we're then adding to that is, what does that mean for how we connect? As we're rethinking office as default, we're definitely moving towards this more hybrid setting, but how do we therefore build connection? Are we making sure that we're still creating a sense of community going forward? And that's on multiple levels. And I think as we'll talk through today, we also want to kind of explode all of this idea outside of the walls of the office. So I know a lot of you are working and focusing, how do we stimulate, community, or if the remit of your role is, the workplace and the workplace itself, but actually what we want to make you try and think about is, what are those wider connections that also exist beyond the physical walls of the workplace, because they're actually all intrinsically linked. So today what we're going to go through is just sort of quick reflection on the current state of connection in this context, but then digging deeper into what are the different sorts of connections, because some of them actually probably won't really be front of mind, and they all build up this whole spectrum of the different sorts of relationships and communities we're a part of. And looking at the different value of those things, as Rachel touched on the loneliness nab, and really understanding the importance of connection. And then ultimately thinking, okay, well, therefore, in this context of these things being so important, what are the sort of places that we should therefore be creating to support the different connections that we all need? And back to that title of, thriving, not surviving. I think such a big part of that is creating thriving places, and it's so inherently linked to people thriving within them. So to get started, if we just move on to the next slide. Just a quick bit of audience participation. Just was very interested in finding out from you guys, what is it that you've missed most over the past year? And knowing that this is kind of a movable feast, we are 14 months in, and we want to just sort of take the pulse. There's been lots of surveys throughout the pandemic, but I'm just going to launch a little poll here, so it should be popping up on your screen. So really, we're just interested, okay, now that you've all been working from home, wherever you've been, what is it you've missed most? Is it that separation between work life and home life, and not really having that difference and the sort of being able to get away? Is it the commute? Don't know how many people miss the commute, but is it being able to concentrate? Maybe if you have kids at home, maybe it was in the homeschooling days, or is it actually those elements of human connection, being able to collaborate with colleagues, so the actual collaboration, but also that more social side of it? So actually, is it just general human contact, and maybe you actually quite like your colleagues, and just anything that you glean from just sort of being with them, being social with them? And if there's any other, please add it in the chat. We're always intrigued as to what are some of those other things that maybe as an industry we're not actually paying enough attention to. Sarah, exactly, people, real humans in the flesh. So maybe that is the socializing or the collaborating with colleagues. Right, I'll just give you another, there's a few more of you to vote. We're on 73%. Anyone else can just cast a little vote. Any more? Okay, so what's really coming up there is this sort of a variety where I work. Yep. So I think, thanks, Ryan. Yeah, that's an interesting one as well. And I think that's where this sort of more hybrid future is really going to come into play, because I think what we've probably all realized is there is a choice to be made. And before, everything was, the office was default, and that was 100% of things. This year we've had the home as default, and that's having to serve 100% of purposes. And actually going forward, I think what we're understanding is the richness of life, that you glean different things from different settings and different experiences, and that's really important. Sorry, one more comment from Sarah. Energy. Yeah, and I think Sarah was saying that this morning about going into the office, and actually how energizing it is to have that variety. Amelia, long lunches. Wonderful. And I think that probably involves people too. Tamara, see a lot of these things actually just, and this is something we're going to pick up on. So Tamara says seeing friends for dinner, the long lunches. I think they're actually also about building human connection. The context might be in a beautiful restaurant, and it involves some lovely food or drinks, Gabi. Other than the inside of my house, Kathy, yeah, all of these great things. And I think for us, I guess the direction we're going in this, and this is definitely backed up here, socializing with colleagues, 41%, that was the biggest part of the vote. This is the human connection that we're all talking about. Oh my goodness, brilliant. Loads of comments there. Right, I'm gonna take my eyes off the comments because I'll be distracted from the main thing. So, okay, so the polls, can you see that on screen, the results? Yeah, so socializing with colleagues really coming up high, and also collaborating. I think this is interesting. We've probably all mastered the art of collaboration via Zoom, via shared documents, all of that, etc. And I think depending on your industry, the nature of your collaboration can be better or worse done through technology. I know kind of in lots of design practices, the result there, collaborating is usually the thing that people are missing most, because the nature of collaboration is usually very interactive around a sheet of paper, scribbling on things, workshopping things. But again, that will vary by organization, by personality. Separation between work life and home life, I think that's also a really key one for all sorts of reasons, whether it's just to give yourself a bit of mental space, give yourself that opportunity to reflect, also not the kind of putting the laptop down and trying to continue life in the same four walls that you've been working at all day. But yeah, I mean, I would say these are issues that have come up again, as I say, all through my research that I carried out at Space Lab. Lots of these are the key issues that kept recurring, and same in the much wider research. And if we just go on to the next slide, share results. So you couldn't see the poll results before, maybe. Sorry, I was talking as if you could, but there are the results now, which hopefully I've already spoken through anyway.
I think there's something in there to be said that by working at home, there's an expectation that we're always available just to jump on a Zoom call and things like that. So in many ways, that's where it's almost like too much collaboration, but not the right type. that means we can't separate the work and home.
Yeah, so not so much an active choice for any of those connections. So they say that, I mean, there's been huge amounts of research done on all of this, and I'm sure lots of you are familiar with various ones of those, and we've just pulled out a few which you may already be familiar with, sort of other ones from the industry. So Gensler did a huge workplace survey, and you can see here this was about understanding, okay, so of the different activities you do, where are they most easily done? And you can see things like collaborating with others, staying up to date, just again being connected with others. The highest score for that was that they are easier at the office, but actually it's similar amounts of people saying actually it's about the same. So, but actually to then compare that to just a more general comment, which was 74% of people just say that people are what they miss most. So even though we've when you focus that on the actual activities, people are kind of a little bit on the fence, saying it's better at the office, but it's about the same, I can still do it remotely. But really, when it comes down to it, people miss people. We are human social creatures that miss human and social contact. So I think that's just a really powerful figure there, to think even though we can make it work at home, we're still just missing human contact. Saberwal survey, they were trying to understand all of these different priorities that we all have as employees, as people who work, where are those things best met? And there was a whole sort of raft of different qualities that we're looking at. I wanted to concentrate on the one on the far right, sense of belonging. And you can see the middle column there, at home. At home is where you most hinder your potential to kind of feel a part of your company, feel a sense of belonging with your colleagues. And that's obviously quite understandable. On the left is company office. So that's the place where you can best feel a sense of belonging. But actually interesting to see that the blue column on the right, both, you actually, by having a hybrid existence, sometime in the office, sometime not in the office, you can still build really strong sense of belonging. So again, connection doesn't mean that you have to be on all the time, you have to be connected all of the time, but it's still having elements of connection in your life are so important, which actually, yes. So no, Rach, carry on, leads nicely onto your loneliness now at work.
So this was a survey that we carried out back in 2019. So way before we went into this pandemic, and we embedded it with the ONS loneliness rating and the UCL loneliness in the workplace survey, just to look at the different types of spaces and work style behaviors that made people feel like they could connect or were a bit more lonely. And as expected, private office, isolation, and people who worked remotely felt the most lonely. But then interestingly, people who were mobile workers felt just as connected as those who had an office of less than 300 people, which are usually the ones where you get that real sense of sort of connection, family, lifestyle. So the really interesting thing here is that the difference between the remote worker and the mobile worker is perhaps choice, the choice to be able to connect with people as and how you want to, and similar to what came up in the poll that you've just done, it's that choice to be able to disconnect when you want as well, and get that real balance between life. So that was really interesting, and something to definitely think about whenever we're going back into the office. But there's a really strong business case for thinking about how we connect and build community as we go back to the office, because we do spend a third of our lives working, and loneliness can be as deadly as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, which is huge. So I'll let that just sit with you for a few minutes. There's a couple of stats here on the left. Back in 2017, the British Red Cross did a huge piece of work that found 9 million people in the UK felt lonely. 1.02 million of those are office workers. And there's another stat that says 3 in 5 people who work feel lonely from Better Up. It's costing, pre-pandemic, so you'd expect this to be higher now, 2.5 billion to 3.7 billion a year to organizations, just in loss of well-being of their staff, so sick leave, carers leave, loss of performance, loss of loyalty, so higher rates of turnover. They expect people with a higher sense of belonging have a 25% higher performance rate and a 50% lower rate of turnover, which is, such an important stat whenever you think about creating that sense of community and connections to your employees to actually enjoy coming together with their colleagues and working together. And then the last one is 3 out of 4 young people. This is a recent survey. 3 out of 4 young people felt their career opportunities were being harmed as a result of not being able to network face to face. So that's the networking piece. That's getting to actually sort of firstly build your network, but connect face to face and sort of feel like you're achieving something. But it's not just about the sort of the friendships that we build. This has many layers. So on the right, I've got a graph that represents Dunbar's number. So that's the cognitive limit to the number of people that you can meaningfully have a relationship with. And it starts with yourself, going back to what Amelia and Gabi talked through. Connecting with your authentic self is so important to your attitude towards creating connections with other people and places. So that's the first layer. And then that builds out to smaller groups. So from the survey we did, we found that the average number of people with a really high sense of belonging had 6 friends at work. The most people that people felt a meaningful connection with at work was 62, but Dunbar stretches that out to 150 people, and that's the number of people in your community that you recognize and you feel a sense of safety around. You might not even know their name. It could be a bus driver, but it's someone that you see on a regular basis, and therefore they become sort of intrinsically knitted into your community. And it's important to know that they're the relationships that we've really lost in this past year whilst working from home. So from what Rosie talked through, the research says that the reason people would want to return to the workplace is connection, the ease of connection, the depth of connection, but the types of connection is really interesting because it ranges. We all think about individual connections, which obviously give us energy boost to be able to reduce fatigue, see different people every day. But they're the connections that we've also been able to build a lot more at home with our local sort of neighbours. Team connections, these provide opportunities for being intensively together face to face, almost more so than connecting virtually. And to build these connections, having sort of meaningful moments of difference or unique experiences that help to get to know one another a bit deeper. And then you sort of stretch it to the sort of further away connections, the relationship with your organization, your company. This is about being plugged into the mainframe, having a shared purpose as the people that you work for. for many organizations, this has actually been strengthened. In mine, it definitely has, because they've done such a great job in trying to make sure everyone knows what's going on while we're all working from home. We've had really regular all staff calls, team calls, being able to actually plug into things that teams are doing that you might not have even known about whenever you were in the office. And then beyond that is the community, as I said before, that wider relationship, your weak ties, and feeling like you're part of something much bigger. And that's the area, as Rosie said before, that we both sort of hone in on in our everyday jobs. And then through some workshops that I ran back in 2019 across quite a few different types of organizations, we came out with 4 different types of relationships that people might want from work. And they're different for everyone depending on the types of relationships you have outside work, on the sort of stage in life that you're in. It looks like they're like sort of easily slot into the orange boxes above, but it's not linear. You can have sort of social friendships within the community piece, etc. But what we found is that there's very different, unique environments and sort of the hardware, software piece that help people to nurture each of these connections, and they're different from one another. So just to give you some headlines, social friendships, so that's about sort of relationships that go beyond what you're working on or the organization you work for. And they're very much about identifying shared interests with other people. So if you can connect into places, they've got a bike store, bike workshop here. If you cycle into work and you see someone else's cycle too, you're more likely to strike up a conversation. So if you can design places that nudge things to talk about, a community board, a map showing different types of routes so that you can talk about where each other live. And then if you find out someone lives near you, there's this phenomenon that you're more likely to actually make a stronger connection, because you can maybe hang out after work or on a weekend. Trusted colleagues is very much about that sort of one-to-one and the team, sort of the strength of the team. This is one that's really struggled over the past year. I think this is completely anecdotal from an organization I spoke to, but they're finding a higher rate of people sort of turning in their colleagues for doing things wrong. So there's this sort of lack of trust and I guess lack of loyalty to the people that you work with whenever you don't have that face-to-face. And that's very much about finding those kind of unique moments, such as going on a walking meeting, something different, get outside the office, or spaces that you can step away from the rest of your team and feel like you're focusing on one another. So foods, things like that. A sense of belonging is an interesting one, because it's probably the easiest to achieve. It's just knowing that you know what's going on around you and you have the permission to talk about it. So just by, say, putting a live project up on the wall means that someone else could approach you and ask you about it, and therefore they can then talk to someone else about it, and you have that shared ownership of things going on in your organization. And then the last one, the weak ties. So this is the one that I think we're going to have to really think about how we rebuild going back in, and I won't dwell on it too much because I think we're going to talk a bit more about it afterwards. But this is very much about your connection with your your local barista. You might not know their name, but just by seeing them every day means that you strike something up that I don't know, makes you feel like you belong to a place, just a place in itself. You're part of the community, the vibe, the entire experience, and to someone else you're their loose, weak connection, and you might make them feel like they belong. So that's a very interesting one.
And I think on here, I mean, to weak ties, it's that wider network, but it's lots of individual moments that you might have. It's smiling at a neighbor who, as you say, you might not even know their name. It's the guy in the cafe who, again, it's just that mutuality and the moment that sparks a connection that actually takes less energy. You're not investing huge amounts in building all of those relationships, but they're the moments throughout the day, the small kind of dopamine hit and feeling of being part of something. So it's, you know, it's not as deep as really building rapport that's going to sort of build resilience, but it's those different moments throughout the day that just make you feel part of something. And I think those are the things that maybe have been missing most, albeit we've probably built it slightly more in a very local sense. But because our lives have been so spatially limited, we're inevitably missing those out. You know, I think that the way that we've built connection has necessarily been so focused, and I think probably, you know, really focused on and prioritized, rightfully so, maybe on very close friends. So it's, you know, the column on the left, social friendships, and probably, you know, necessarily when it's in person, people who are very, very local. So there's kind of whole swathes of even our social friendships that we've probably missed out because there's just not enough time and space to see all of those people. The trusted colleagues comment, you know, as Rachel said, I think that's so prevalent as well, because in this Zoom relationship kind of setting, we just don't have the time and the space to build those extra bits of connection. I think David just made a comment in the chat about, you know, not really seeing the whites of eyes because, you know, you're just on a Zoom call and actually there's no time built in for the small talk. And lots of people can criticize small talk, and, you know, some people will be pleased to be rid of it, but it's not just small talk. It's moments of actually getting to know people beyond the pure subject matter of a meeting. And actually those bits of building rapport can actually be so important and can spark ideas and collaboration at other points in time. So, you know, I think this whole raft of different types of connection have their place in building, you know, parts of our day and parts of our lives. And what we wanted to do here, just quickly in the chat, if we can just ask you some questions around, you know, what type of connection do you think you've missed most over the past year? You may say, actually, I've managed really well on the first and second, but I'm missing the third and the fourth. We're just quite intrigued as to, yeah, how have your connections kind of played out in this context that we're in? So
I can't see the chat, so I think you're going to have to shout them out, Rosie.
Okay, right. I'm just going to catch up. Okay, so we probably don't really know.
And I think the resilience one is a really interesting point, because we probably didn't really realize until now how much we've built our resilience over the past year on those weaker ties, on the neighborhood, the people who we see walking the dog every day. And if you were to implant that on your work life, those who have that sense of familiarity with people in a local work community sense will know that actually that is so important.
Yeah. So some questions. So Sarah, this was almost just before my question, but it's still a really relevant point. It was sort of a question about London and, you know, the rat race. And I know I'm a kind of a Londoner through and through, but I even have to check myself sometimes. You know, the second you kind of go back to life in London and you jump on a tube and it's all about the destination. And the question was, do you think cities will be different after this and will have more respect for each other to allow for moments to pause rather than mob mentality? I mean, I can only speak from personal experience. I definitely think this year for me has been a huge time of reflection and a slowing down. And yeah, I'd like to think as I emerge back into kind of a more out there way of life that I would bring some of that with me. And I felt it actually through going through Amelia and Gabi's piece at the beginning of just even taking that moment to even reflect and think, yes, okay, these are the values and my way of thinking. So I would think in cities, I think there's also going to be this hybrid of actually, you know, when people are going in, they're going in to do some stuff. But I think a large part of that is going in order to connect. I don't think people are going to trek into the office every day just to sit and concentrate and get work done. I think for a lot of people, the purpose of going in is going to be to connect. So some of those sort of taking those moments will be seen to be really important. Tamara mentions here the kind of going to the coffee shop near my office. And this is exactly the sort of thing that Rachel and I are sort of focusing on here, that, you know, going to work or the workplace is so much more than just the four walls of your office. It's that whole ecosystem around a workplace that contributes to the experience of work and is so valuable to that. Tamara, I didn't know how much I missed the daily experience, so I went back into London. Kathy, I felt a lot closer to my colleagues. So we've been through a trauma together and come closer and shown vulnerability. I think that's fascinating. And I think you know, as Rachel said, those trusted colleagues, when you've been through those things together, and traditionally that was obviously usually in a physical space, that is what built rapport. But yeah, agreed. And I think, and there's also, you know, these moments of crisis, you do often pull together, and that's great if you can manage that. But as Rach said as well, there's been some cases where actually, you know, at moments of crisis, people may start to sort of look out for number one. Right, Gerard, I think, sorry, I missed yours. So recent webinar I was on mentioned research, can't remember where, that showed the proximity between Zoom face on screen only happens in real life when you're attracted or hostile to the other people. Yeah, now I'm very conscious of how large my face is on this screen, but yeah, fascinating. And also there's obviously been like research on, you know, that intimacy of seeing into people's worlds and into their lives can be great also in terms of us having more empathy with our colleagues. You know, when you can see the situation they're in with children or whatever, and you see that maybe your boss is just human, I think a lot of that has gone some way to building connection or building, as I say, empathy. David, oh hi David. I used to have everyone in the office for the last 14 months. It's been a large amount of churn, and when we return, it feels almost like being in a whole different company. And of course, you were in your new office. I know, David, just before you shut down. I suppose, but there, I think it's a really good example. You know, you've got a beautiful new office, and that's such an exciting thing for people to come back to. You know, so the other part of this, and we're going to move on in a moment, actually this is a nice segue, we're moving on to the importance of place and the role that plays in connection. And I think the very first point is the role that place can play in, you know, being an attractor, being, if you've got a rubbish office and it's in a part of town that you don't want to go to, and it's not an enjoyable experience, then what is it that's bringing you there? So yes, connection of people is great, but you're not going to go all the way now that, you know, Zoom, we know that Zoom works to an extent. So we're going to be talking in a moment about, yeah, the importance of place and what we can do with place to encourage people to come and to create a great experience when we're there. But another quick question that we had for you before we do that was, are there any ways, you know, in the interest of kind of sharing and all learning from each other today and thinking of ideas that we can take back to our own organizations, are there any sort of great ways that you've found within your organizations where people have tried to build and maintain connection through the pandemic? You know, are there traditions or cultural things that you used to do or have that you've tried to kind of recreate over Zoom, you know, the kind of Friday drinks over Zoom, or I think many of those died a death after a few weeks of people still, you know, thinking on a Friday, actually, I've been sitting at the desk all Friday, I'm going to go and have a drink with my friends rather than my colleagues I've been seeing over Zoom. But anyway, yeah, are there any good ideas that people have to share?
I mentioned the all-staff calls that sort of give you a deeper connection, firstly to the leadership team, who you know, probably only saw once every other week before the pandemic, but then also to understand a bit more about what other teams across the organization are actually working on.
Yeah, the things that you miss in person, you know, the things that would usually be stuck up on a wall that you don't walk past or over here. So trying to, find ways to recreate the things that are lost by not being physically co-present. As I say, I've actually just started a new role through the pandemic, which also, I guess, links to what David has just said. And of course, that's quite an experience in itself. But so I don't know what all the former sort of cultures and ways of doing things were. But, you know, just so last week there was they kind of sent everybody there's been a tradition of Friday bagels, so they sent everyone a voucher to go and get bagels last Friday as a sort of a way of trying to reconnect and build some of those traditions that people used to have. But okay, so Kathy's added something here. Every day I have a social Zoom at 2 where people can join if they want. Not a chance to talk about work, but talk about anything else. Lovely. And that sounds like, Kathy, not want to put words in your mouth, but maybe it's kind of an open Zoom. So some days you have lots of people, some days you have a few, and it's maybe just trying to recreate, you know, cliched term, but the water cooler or the social hub where actually it's just complete chance encounters and you may or may not bump into the same people. Yeah, okay. So Ryan, you've rationalized the platforms to connect: Yammer, MS Teams, WebEx, Miro. Yeah, technology, of course, you know, as we say, completely key in all of this. I don't think we'd be doing anywhere near as successfully if this was kind of 20 years ago and we didn't have all tech tools. So yeah, Kathy, monthly team lunch where the company pays for us to order Deliveroo. It's great to eat together. That's really lovely. Yeah, kind of, yeah, that's a really nice way of doing things. So some of these actually feature, if we move on to the next slide, actually, that works quite well. So actually some of these were some of our guesses, I suppose. That Deliveroo, third from the left, Kathy, that's maybe he's delivering your team lunch. But yeah, so on the far left, we had this sort of an idea of like a coffee roulette. I know that some companies are trying to, again, trying to engineer the spontaneity and pair people up for a, bump into each other on Zoom for have a coffee and have a chat. As I say, the Friday drinks over Zoom, which I think is varying degrees of success for different companies, Deliveroo, and then this on the right, Rach, this was an app that we spoke about, wasn't it? Just trying to engage people maybe digitally if they can. They're still being on screen, but maybe more interactively outside. I think Rach mentioned Pokemon Go.
And I think too, was it Ryan who made the comment before about technology? I think we've all found so many more ways to connect with one another. Firstly, I mean, for a lot of people, it's quite overwhelming because there's maybe too much connection firing you in all directions. But whenever we do go back to our like new future amazing way of working, we'll have learned sort of ways to connect, ways to collaborate that'll maybe take pressure off something that was more difficult before and open up space to do it in a better way.
Yeah. Amelia, I love that no one mentioned quizzes. yeah, thank goodness. I think maybe people did that too much on their personal friendship groups on Saturday nights that they realized I'm not going to bring this into the work context. Okay, so this was about finding ways to connect remotely, but our kind of final piece of the puzzle again is trying to bring this back to, okay, well, what do we working in this industry need to be thinking about in terms of this opportunity to how do we build places of connection? And as I said, I think everyone on this call is probably already quite expert in understanding the hybridity of our work and the need to provide more choice within the office, lots more spaces for collaboration, etc. And so today is not about that. I think probably everybody's well versed in it. So really it's about thinking, what's the bigger scale of place that we need to be thinking about? How do we try and build in, it's more towards that weak ties end of the scale, but also it's towards trying to nurture new types of relationship and connection with our existing colleagues. So here we're trying to think outside of the four walls of the office and connect both with your colleagues, but also with those outside. So just some images to spark ideas. And again, please add any comments if you have reflections on any of these, what's worked, what's not worked so well in your own experience, or whether you think this would be something that you'd be interested in trying to implement. But we've got things like really active lobby spaces on the ground floor, which pull people from within the building together, but also are open to the public, bring the outside in and connect from the inside to the out. I've got an example there of the Ace Hotel lobby in Shoreditch, which actually sadly has closed through lockdown, not to return. But it was really one of those quite iconic examples, of those first examples of activating place in a very different way, which was, it's not a traditional hotel lobby. It was about bringing people in, so it's activated at different times of the day. You didn't have to be a hotel guest, you'd be there to work, you'd be there to get a drink, in use throughout the day with different people at different times, and really creating a fantastic buzz. The next one, third from the left on top, again, that's a lobby, but that's of a build-to-rent of a residential building. But actually, again, it's not just for the residents. It becomes a connection between if you live there and you don't live there, but you can still come and use the space. And again, it's that overlapping of different types of people in a space that just feels great, and it's a place that you want to go and be. In this world where we're not all going to be in the office all the time, if you were to live in this building or near this building, you could go and spend part of your day there, either working or not working, connecting with others. Then we've got, right, this is a Lend-Lease project, isn't it, top right, meeting spaces that are outdoors.
Yeah, the living room. This one is in Stratford, but conscious of this subject that we're talking about and creating sort of workplace that goes beyond the boundaries of sort of the space that people rent. This is one of a series of sort of places that people can actually plug into power, Wi-Fi, there's lighting and shelter, and just sit and work for a day by themselves, or as a team. You see people meeting quite often with a coffee and then use this as the start of sort of a walking route around Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. So as well as that, being able to plug into sort of natural surroundings. We all know that biophilia is a really great way of sort of pulling yourself back to feeling that you're your authentic self.
Being outside, we've got here a running track. So I think we mentioned earlier walking meetings, maybe you can have running meetings, and here it's that, you know, giving people connection and outdoors, but actually also that communities of connection. So finding finding colleagues that you might want to go for a run with, build a different type of relationship, have a whole different type of conversation when you're pounding not the pavements, the rooftop of, I think that's the White Collar Factory in Shoreditch. A couple of other examples here about, you know, thinking about place beyond the office, how you're activating the areas around your office through some of these interesting types of, you know, it's hospitality, it might also be interesting retail, but it's, you know, building a sense of a thriving place where, again, you want to go into, leave home to go and have an experience of a day, and part of that is work. You know, the evening economy, going and, you know, sitting on a rooftop terrace watching a film, having outdoor yoga, but again, just really giving people opportunities to, it's either build connection or do the things they enjoy doing once they leave the house, to create a really active sort of outdoor world that they're launching themselves into post COVID. I'm just conscious of time. We are coming to the end. I think we just want a few more minutes to wrap up at the end, but this was us just trying to start stimulating some thoughts about really creating great places that are beyond the office, but very much a part of a working day. The following slides, we've just got some kind of resource links that you can click on, and this can be shared afterwards, and just got some email addresses. But if there are any other comments that people have or ideas about place, then please shout in the chat box. We've just got a minute or so before I think Sarah's going to give us a little wrap up.
I just need to say as well, David, you gave a wave before, and I read an article, it might have even been yesterday, about the importance of people waving to one another whenever it's virtual. And a lot of people have tried to stop doing it because it's not professional, but the article kind of wrapped up with saying the day we stop doing that is the day we lose our humanity, because it's such a human thing to do and it really helps you to connect. I did like that.
I often feel silly waving at the end of a call, but then realize it feels nice. It feels my authentic self. Mm-hmm. Kathy, I love waving. Oh, lovely. Okay. If no one's got any comments on sort of place, you know, again, we've got our emails at the end. If anyone wants to get in touch and chat through any of this stuff, we obviously love it. If
anyone wants some help to build up a business case or anything, it's, you know, there is a really strong one to build in some other programs or design changes or whatever it might be, to build connection in your organization. Here's a couple of references, but do get in touch. We're really happy to speak to you. I'll flick across one that we did specific to workplace at the Loneliness Lab whenever I come out with this presentation.
Yeah, because really, you know, it's about place, but it's also about, you know, the layers of activation and kind of programming on top of that you know, yes, we're in the world of building physical things, but it's also how you bring those things to life. So yeah.
Can I just pick up on something? Is that okay?
Yeah, go.
It's too long to write in the chat, but I think it's really interesting. I love what you're saying about the different connection spaces, but also, you know, having been in change management before, it's the permission to use them. And that's, if you're changing stuff, then it's like, okay, so how does this new thing work? And when can I use it? And how can I use it? And who can I use it with? And so that permission giving piece with the newness is always so important. And it's not, and I also often used to find that, well, I've told them once, but it's not, it's about refreshing that message and continuing to cascade and encourage. We've got this great new thing. Yeah, and role model, exactly. So I just thought you can create these spaces and why aren't they working? It's like, well, no one really said.
And also at this time we have to accept some things may not work. because actually this is a time of learning. So some of these investments that people are thinking of potentially making, you know, don't go all out and completely redo everything and spend all the budget, because actually at this point it's a time to learn. It's making small interventions and trying things out, you know, an equivalent of a pop-up or a kind of a meanwhile use, to think, actually, how does this work? Let's learn from it. Is this what we need? Is this what we need right now? I think we're going to have these periods of change that are going to keep coming for a while as we settle into what our new choices, and I don't use the term new normal, but different phases of us readjusting back to a different way of living. And so being able to try those things out, learn from them, tweak it again, and as you say, Amelia, keep communicating, encouraging people to try it, and
to feedback.
Yeah,
to feedback how it's going. I love the temporary sort of cafes that have spilled out onto the streets so that things are outdoors, and you've seen how they've started to change as well based on how people are using them. So this sort of everything in a beta, is that what the term is? Yeah.
And just to link back to the session that we had last week, and if anybody missed that, again, please attend our wrap up that we have on June 2nd. But thinking about the piece that Lydia from Collier's went through in terms of being a leader, and the fact that we're all leaders. And so coming back to that communication piece, if something's not working, don't be afraid to speak up. We're all in this moment where we don't really understand what the next thing will be. We've got to try new things. And I think the total empowerment through personal, the wider community, but then really taking that full circle that we all have a voice is really important. You guys,
sounds like all the collaboration is happening behind you, Sarah.
There's not even that many people
to go
here.
into the office, you know, that's it. What a great place.
I do want to give the audience a moment, guys. Fantastic session. So thank you for coming and presenting today and interacting with everybody that's been on the call. Are there any last thoughts from anybody? I know we're running up to time and want to give you a moment if anything's come up. No? Well, hopefully it's just been a fantastic way to start your day. I know I'm feeling good and ready to go chatterbox at all these people around me. There's only like 2, by the way. It's really loud. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.